started swimming again, and it's true your life flashes before your eyes. I had so many memories rush back in the split second I decided to either stand up or sink. The water was about chest high, thankfully. I am 6 feet 5 inches tall, and honestly, that is what made the difference. Story 43. Once, when I was riding my bike, a badger ran in front of me as I was going 80 miles per hour, and I hit it straight on. I could see that there were many trees on both sides of the road, so I aimed to slide along the road instead. Miraculously, I managed to stay upright even though my handlebars went full lock a couple of times. I was really lucky. I stopped and went back, but the animal was dead, so I pushed it into the ditch. I was shaking the whole ride home after that. The only damage to my bike was the front fender, which was cracked on both sides, and I had to replace it. Story 44. I was at a summer camp in France with a large group. After an excursion, we had to wait for everyone before boarding the train. It turned out the train we missed was involved in a fatal crash, resulting in several deaths and injuries. I was in the group that would have boarded that train, but I'm grateful our camp counselors decided to wait. After we boarded the next train, we experienced numerous delays and needed to be picked up. Everyone was confused, annoyed, and tired after a full day of activities. It wasn't until we reached the camp that the counselors pulled me and a few others aside to explain the situation. Since we were the oldest campers, I was 17, they instructed us to call our parents and assure them that we were safe and unharmed. Story 45. I was on my way to work one morning. It was still dark out and I was running late. For some reason, I decided to pass the car in front of me, even though we were approaching a hill. I came within feet, if not inches, of a head-on collision with a vehicle in its correct lane, narrowly making it back into my lane. I felt bad for years about that close call I made in 2008. I could have ended at least 2 lives. Story 46. 5-hour energy, workout, sinus medication, and no water resulted in an ambulance being called due to erratic heart rhythms and a dropping body temperature. 5-hour energy is dangerous and its effects can last more than 5 hours. Story 47. On my 15th birthday, I was jaywalking, something we always did on that street when going to the convenience store. 2 lanes of traffic were stopped at the red light, but the right turn only lane still had cars coming, which I didn't notice. A car was approaching that lane a little fast as I stepped in front of it. The driver slammed on the brakes 2 feet away from hitting me. That would have been my last birthday. Now I am in my 50s. Story 48. All of a sudden, I did not feel well. Long story short, I found out I had stage 4 cancer. I went downhill extremely fast. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, and I couldn't even sit or function. They rushed me into chemotherapy, and here I am, in no pain and feeling much better. Story 49. When I was in 4th grade, I fell from a tree after the branch I was holding broke. If I had landed a few more degrees to my right, I would have been paralyzed. If I had landed a few more degrees on my head, I would have been dead. Believe in God or not, but everyone who saw it said, angels were carrying you on the way down. Story 50. Hit by a semi on the 10 outside of Los Angeles. A state trooper came and said he expected to see fatalities when he was informed that a semi-truck had hit a compact car on the highway. Story 51. I had a very serious blood clot in my leg that the hospital initially diagnosed as cellulitis, but did not advise me to stop taking my estrogen birth control. They were confused when I returned and was still in extreme pain. Then they thinned my blood significantly, putting me at risk of bleeding out if I encountered any trauma. Ironically, my mother had surgery about a year later, and the same hospital also misdiagnosed her blood clot as bronchitis. The only reason I knew to request an ultrasound for a blood clot was due to my experience and her symptoms being so similar to mine. Story 52. I almost drowned at times, but the main issue was that I stopped eating when I was 18 months old. Not just candy, cookies, or ice cream, nothing at all. I was hospitalized for weeks before I began to recover. Without modern medicine, I would have died. I was on intravenous nutrition for a while and grew up with a severe needle phobia. I have experienced digestive problems my entire life, but I am alive. Story 53. At 21, I experienced a gallstone blockage that resulted in severe acute pancreatitis, which has a mortality rate of approximately 20%. Emergency surgery was quite challenging. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye. Story 1. The makeup of your social media feed can be entirely user-generated, but companies can determine the proportion of various ideologies and who sees specific content. They can choose to elevate right-wing influencers and suppress left-wing influencers, or vice versa. Story 2. You are immune to misleading information. You are too intelligent to fall for deception. You have never spread falsehoods. Story 3. Deceptive imagery persuasion is the most insidious tactic, as it spreads quickly in visual media on social platforms that dominate today. The idea that a lie can spread halfway around the world before the truth can catch up is more relevant than ever. Rise insights on this topic, particularly regarding Russia's extensive use of it through social networks mixed with unwitting participants. Story 4. Ukraine provoked Russia and is responsible for the Russian invasion is a clear example of current propaganda. Story 5. The cultural war is a distraction from the real issues. The divisions between political parties, whether in the United States or elsewhere, serve to divert attention from pressing matters. In the United States, this is evident, but it is also visible in Argentina, where the government has failed to address the economic situation and instead has fostered hatred towards vulnerable groups. Similarly, in Brazil under President Bolsonaro, a parallel approach has been observed. This pattern may continue in many countries in the future. We must stop fighting over trivial matters. Issues concerning transgender individuals, racial minorities, women, and the LGBTQ+ community do not cause harm. It is essential to move past pointless discussions and focus on how politicians globally are mismanaging our economies, potentially leading us into another economic crisis. Story 6. Propaganda is most effective when those being manipulated believe they are acting on their own free will. Joseph Goebbels. Story 7. The sensationalist news cycle focuses on trivial matters, such as balloons that the two largest air forces in the world cannot shoot down, an influencer bothering Australian wildlife, and a celebrity feud. None of this is significant. The worst part is that it distracts us from the more serious issues happening around us. Story 8. I think a significant issue is the perception that if someone is poor, they are lazy. Equating poverty with a moral failing serves as an excuse for selfishness among those who are more financially well off. Story 9. Most of what is on Reddit indicates that any site of this size will attract various types of propaganda. Story 10. Corporate culture, advertising, and the American work environment in general. The whole hustle and grind mentality reflects people competing for limited resources due to the absence of a safety net in the United States. Story 11. Everything is labeled as false information. They have been influencing people since the 1980s because they overturned the law requiring both sides to be represented. If they tell you everything is false except what they say, then you can be easily influenced, which has happened. Story 12. Selectively reporting only those aspects that fit the narrative is a common practice. The narrative comes first and then facts and events are selected to align with it. Both sides engage in this and people consistently fall for it. Currently, Dodge is highlighting questionable government spending. However, they do not provide the total budget of the agencies or a comprehensive list of their expenditures. The vast majority of the funding could be directed toward initiatives that Americans support,